Committee, I think we'll go ahead and get started. Everybody's here. I don't have to have my laptop open. We're going to turn our attention to working some bills today. It's my intention to work two bills today, the autonomous vehicle bill and the Hutchinson license plate bill. We do have session at 9:30. I know it's not required that we be there for roll call, but I know a lot of people would like to do that. So be mindful of time. With that, we'll turn our attention back to working Senate Bill 546. Adam, from where you're at, do you want to give us just a quick briefing?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Senate Bill 546 would regulate the use of autonomous motor vehicles. Driverless capable vehicles would have the ability to operate in the state without a human driver if the vehicle is capable of achieving a minimal risk condition. The vehicle is capable of operating in compliance with applicable traffic and motor safety laws and regulations of the state. The vehicle bears the required manufacturer's certificate label, and a conventional human driver was present in the vehicle for 1 year for each entity that placing vehicles into the state. Owners of driverless capable vehicles would be required to submit to law enforcement an interaction plan. The bill would require ADS-equipped vehicles to obtain financial or insurance security prior to operating in the state. The bill would establish requirements for driverless capable vehicles in the event of an accident. It would allow for the operation of on-demand driverless capable vehicles that can be used to transport persons or goods. The bill would establish that automated driving systems would be subject to applicable traffic and motor safety laws. KDOT would have the sole authority to regulate these systems, and political subdivisions are prohibited from imposing additional requirements or taxes. ADS vehicles would be required to be properly registered and titled under Kansas law. It would allow for the operation of driverless capable vehicles as commercial motor vehicles. It would establish the Autonomous Vehicle Advisory Committee. The committee would be required to submit a report on or before July 1st of 2023 with recommendations regarding the use or regulations of autonomous motor vehicles in the state. Then, kind of lastly, the bill would provide that law enforcement would deliver a written citation for a traffic infraction of a driverless capable vehicle operating without a conventional human driver by mailing a citation to the certified owner of the vehicle. And with that, I'd be happy to stand for any questions.
Committee, any questions on the bill? Committee, the other, I believe it was Wednesday, I'd handed out an amendment commonly referred to as the Clump Amendment. It was worked on by several folks. I just realized that there may be a newer version of that. You should have in your folder. Adam, I think I will go with the newer version. It is identical to the one that Ed Clump had. There is some changes, like where we said 1 year following the date that a person first operates a driverless vehicle. It does change it on that part of that amendment to the 12 continuous months. And Adam, if you can pass that out, I think I'll go with that one because I forgot that change was in there. I believe this change came out of a discussion with Will Lawrence and when they were reviewing the amendments and discussing it with the groups. Senator Clays.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. What's the difference between continuous and consecutive?
Adam?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just take a step back, make sure everyone's on the same balloon. The new balloon, if you look at the first page, it'll say autonomous vehicles number 2. And the only change from the prior balloon kind of is made on the second page, page 2, the first 2 boxes on the right. And the prior balloon, paragraph 4, I believe, was mainly stricken, and maybe a new provision was inserted. In this balloon, it's unstricken with these changes made. Thinking back to the original question, the 12 continuous months mean, they would have to operate every month instead of just operating the first day and then having to wait, 11 months and providing no further operation, and then on the end of the year could then operate driverless. Here they would have to operate for 12 continuous months before that provision would kick in, if that makes sense. Sorry if I'm not understanding correctly.
Senator Clays.
No, I think you're understanding me correctly. What I'm trying to distinguish between would be that I understand you don't want someone to come in on day one, operate once, and then not operate again for 12 months, and then be able to operate without any oversight. What I'm trying to avoid here, though, is that continuous, and you tell me, continuous does not mean that they need to start operating on day one and not stop the operation for 12 months. That the months simply need to be consecutive in nature and not that someone is literally every single day of every month or every hour of every day of every month operating. Is there a difference between that when you use the word continuous instead of having the months be consecutive, where one could operate a day or two in a month, but the next month they would have to operate a day or two as well, and the next month a day or two, or a day or two, or so on? And that's the distinguishing element here I'm looking for in the difference between continuous and consecutive. Or maybe there's another word that makes more sense for the purposes of what they were trying to accomplish, because I understand what Will was trying to accomplish with it. And I don't want it to be overly burdensome for the purposes of achieving that 12-month mark, that one would have to operate it every day of every month to meet the requirement.
I do believe you bring up a good point, and it could be subject to various interpretations. So I think continuous versus consecutive, changing to consecutive may have merit.
I think that's what we'll do. Committee, are there any other questions on what's commonly referred to as I'll offer this amendment that's before you, knowing that we will probably change the consecutive immediately following, but this is the one that was developed by Ed Clump. I think he reviewed it with the league also. Senator Pittman.
Right underneath that, on the second page, section 4, where you've added the second balloon, or the second balloon is here. It says that this provision shall not apply to a person that operates a vehicle that is not designed, intended, or marketed for human occupancy. Does that mean that we won't require a driver to be in cars, automobiles, trucks, et cetera, that don't have a place for humans, and they are therefore exempt from going through this process? Or does it mean that we're just not going to allow them to operate?
I would think it would allow them to operate, but they wouldn't have to have a driver in the actual vehicle if there's some of those smaller ones that operate on the roads if they're not designed. I'm thinking like that one on the Domino's pizza commercial comes to mind.
So you're thinking that if they don't have a place for a person, then they can automatically be coming to the state and do their autonomous vehicle stuff? We wouldn't require that kind of pilot program?
That's what I believe it does. I don't know if we...
Just so you know, I'm not a big fan of that, since we would be putting the burden on only those that have seats for drivers, and then we're just going to be opening up for the rest of those that don't. But I think that kind of expands out what that intent was, but that's just my opinion.
Further questions or comments? Senator Tyson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Senator Clays raises an issue that I don't think by changing one word clears it up. What does that mean, 12 months? Does that mean so many hours a week or so many? I don't, I think it's still vague.
I don't know what the operation, I think that can be determined later on. If they're operating in the state and they operate every day, once a month, I think that would probably be consecutive months if we go with the consecutive.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I don't know what the objective was for the 1 year, but to me, it either seems like it's arbitrary, not needed, if it's only allowing you to operate 12 days in a year. But if there's some teeth to it, then we should, I don't know what the intent of the 1 year was, but I don't know that this satisfies it. Thank you.
My thought on the intent of the 1 year was that a lot of these vehicles are retrofitted by companies, and that they've got their retrofit out there. They're going to operate in the state of Kansas. We'd like to have them have a safety driver sitting in that seat for a period of a year just to make sure that everything's going fine and hunky-dory, and we can get the report that comes back to us to see how they're doing. I see your point, though. Senator Hott.
Just another thought, this gets complex. We could say 12 consecutive months operating at least 40 hours per month, if we wanted to make sure that it wasn't just a 1 hour a month or 10 minutes a month. I don't know that that fixes it, but that could be another way of setting a standard for it.
Further questions or comments? Senator Dietrich.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I am trying to skim this to find where we have the information about the advisory group, that committee. Is it in this?
It'll probably be coming in the next, there's some in here, but there's future amendments that are coming that change the advisory group around.
Okay. Who is submitting those, may I ask? Are they coming from others?
This amendment right here came from the Ed Clump. I asked the opponents to get together and some of the neutrals and the proponents, and they got together and they came up. This is the piece that was worked out with law enforcement. And then the group that was working with the others had contacted Will Lawrence, and he had come up with the idea of 12 consecutive over 1 year, which I thought that would be great. If the committee wants to put the 40 hours in, we can have another amendment and we'll see how it goes.
That component of that autonomous vehicle advisory committee was just, I thought, pretty solid. So I was just curious about that.
Yes.
Thank you.
Senator Hott.
Mr. Chairman, I know we like to have amendments in writing, and I certainly do when possible, but if it would be helpful, I would offer that as a conceptual amendment to add to that, and we could see if the committee agrees that that helps clarify that.
Let's put this one on.
Okay, and then come back.
And then we'll do the consecutive and move forward.
Okay, thank you. You tell me when.
Senator Pittman.
I'm just going to reemphasize my point. I don't understand why we would impose a 1 year test period on anybody if we're not going to do it for the ones that don't have a driver too. I mean, why would we want to do that? I don't understand why would change this so that we'll take the 1 year out for anybody who doesn't have a driver. I mean, it could be a massive truck, a big SWAT vehicle. I don't know if the police are going to do that or not, but I don't understand why we wouldn't put some kind of a trial period. Granted, they can't have a driver in it or a ride-along, but it also seems like we're just opening the door to that without having the same kind of consideration. It seems unfair to the others. So I'll just reemphasize that that's what this amendment seems to be doing, and it doesn't seem like the right solution to me, but I don't know whether the right solution would be.
Senator Hott.
Following up on what Senator Pittman said, and if we're thinking of Part A, like the commercials we've seen on the Amazon or the Domino's pizza type vehicles, I wonder if we could could limit that, saying that only applied to vehicles under a certain weight limit. So it wouldn't be an automobile, it wouldn't be a truck, but it might be one of the, and I don't know how much those pizza delivery type vehicles or Amazon package type vehicles weigh, but I'm guessing it's less than 1,000 pounds. That could be a suggestion to get at that also, if that would be helpful. So I throw that in the pot too.
If some of them are electric, I imagine they would weigh way more than 1,000 pounds. A battery might be close.
Yeah, they might, but I doubt that they would be the same weight as an automobile. And I don't remember what happened to the bill that we had on the floor. I thought it passed.
That one passed.
Yeah, so that's, so maybe it's whatever a golf cart weighs, or less, but I thought.
Further questions? Senator Cluse.
I wonder if, thank you, Mr. Chairman, on the language back to Senator Tyson, driverless capable vehicle placed into service in Kansas for the first year, having the 12 continuous months, I think the intent here is while in operation, while in testing. I don't know if that would help some of the language there. I mean, it's almost assumed that the reason we got a human driver in there is during the testing time of these vehicles, during the operation. I don't know if that would help it or not.
Senator Clays.
Yeah, I think what they're trying to avoid is someone coming in on day one of the 12-month clock, operating once, and then waiting 12 months and going driverless completely. I don't necessarily support having safety drivers in here for a year. I just want to be clear. What I don't want to see happen is that we go the other way with this, where for 12 solid months, every waking hour, a vehicle has to be in operation to qualify for these 12 months. What they're also trying to avoid is that you could come in and operate and then wait a year and operate again and wait a year and operate again. So you want those to be consecutive. You don't want them to necessarily spread them out over a number of years.
Committee, I'll make the motion that we adopt this amendment known as the Ed Clump. Do I have a second? Seconded by Senator Wilborn. Further discussion? Senator Hawk.
Just so I'm clear, would this be the time for me to make my amendment, the conceptual amendment, or wait till this passes? If it
Pass
passes?
this and
Okay.
then start working it out.
Okay, gotcha. Thank you.
All those in favor signify by saying aye. Those opposed? Do you wish your no to be recorded? Senator Pittman wishes to be recorded no. Next, we'll go back to, I believe, Senator Clays and talked about a consecutive language.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I would just move that we change the word continuous to consecutive. And I'm not adding in additional language to that solely because I don't want this to become overly burdensome for the entity that's attempting to test. If the goal we're trying to achieve is that for 12 months they have a safety driver, then I think this accomplishes that. Though I do also, again, want to reiterate that I don't necessarily agree with a full 12-month period for a safety driver for an autonomous vehicle. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Seconded by Senator Dietrich for discussion on the amendment. Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Those opposed, amendment is adopted. Senator Hawk.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I would add a conceptual, make a conceptual amendment that puts after that 12 now consecutive months, comma, operating a minimum of 40 hours per month during the testing period. And I might add,
I don't know if testing period's in the language, that's what I'm looking for.
I'd be happy to take that out if it doesn't help. I could just end it at operating a minimum of 40 hours per month.
You got that motion, Adam?
And I'm not married to the 40 hours, but that seems a reasonable period of time per month. That would be 10 hours per week.
Do we have a second? Seconded by Senator Pittman. Further discussion on the amendment? Senator Wilborn.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I do have a question. He kind of answered it himself. The carrier of the conceptual amendment, is there anything magical about 40? I just wonder why we chose 40.
I was originally thinking 160, and that seemed really reasonable. It's a 40-hour week, but it would seem if you're going to have a reliable test that it ought to, if you wanted to know if it was going to work, operating at least 10 hours per week. And that seemed to, I didn't want to do 10 hours per week, seemed like 40 hours per month, and we ought to be able to get enough data from that. Maybe 20 would work. Like I said, I have nothing magical about that, but it seemed a reasonable compromise in my meager mind to 160.
Senator Clays.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So this, in essence, committee, what this is a 480-hour test period that's being mandated, and I'm going to oppose it based upon that length of testing that's required. I get wanting to have a safety driver in a vehicle for a period of time when it is a retrofitted vehicle that was not purpose-built to be autonomous, and that's fine, but 12 months is too much, and I'm willing to vote for that because that's what everyone compromised to. But this additional requirement for it to be 480 hours that is dragged over 12 months seems burdensome. If we're going to do that, then I would propose that you just simply say that it requires 480 hours and let them get it over with a lot quicker. So the periods of time we're dealing with here can either be calendar or they can be hours, but I don't think they need to be both. So if we are going to go down this road, the next proposal will be to get rid of the 12 months altogether and go to hours solely, because this is starting to get kind of far afield of where we need to be. So I'm going to oppose this particular amendment with all due respect to the carrier.
Committee, further discussion? All those in favor of the 40-hour signify by saying aye. Those opposed? Amendment fails. We're back on the bill. Senator Hawk.
I have another conceptual amendment following up what Senator Pittman mentioned about item A, and that conceptual amendment would be for vehicles weighing less than 2,000 pounds. And the intent of that is to get at those small Amazon-type, Domino Pizza-type vehicles that would not have room for a driver, but would not give carte blanche to larger passenger-type vehicles that probably weigh in excess of 3,000 or 4,000, 5,000 pounds. I'll make that motion for amendment.
That applies to both A and B, or just A? The vehicle it is not designed or intended? And I believe a lot of those probably do. I'm thinking battery weight of 1,000 pounds. Some of those little things may weigh this like a small pickup.
I'm just trying to avoid it being a passenger car, so I'm open to any number that would do that. I'm not sure what number that might be, but 2,000 sounds reasonable to me, but that's not based on total factual knowledge.
Senator Clays.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I appreciate what the maker of the amendment's attempting to do, but without the information that's necessary to make a decision like that on a bill that's going to become permanent in statute, I think we should wait on that or take that up when it goes to the other side of the building. That's a pretty substantial alteration to what we've been discussing through this process, and I would oppose, if that is made into a motion, I would oppose that at this time, just simply for lack of information on exactly what we're dealing with when it comes to the weights of those different operating vehicles, or whatever we're calling them, the little robots that are going to cook my pizza on its way to its destination.
Senator Hawk.
Thank you, or accidentally cook your Amazon package. But anyway, I hear that, and I probably have some agreement, but rather than withdrawing the amendment, maybe it'd be better to have it in here so the record shows that we were thinking about that and we could vote it down.
Senator Wilborn.
Thank you, and I'm not part of the research department at all, but I noticed on the internet, the Amazon Scout robot weighs 100 pounds with a 150-pound package. That's whatever that's worth. It's worth nothing, I realize, but I think what I'm saying is we're throwing darts at a target we don't know where we're going with.
Yeah, I don't know what a neuro weighs either. Senator Pittman.
I don't disagree with what's been discussed. I do think, though, that when we talk about substantially changing things, we are substantially changing things over the last 3 or 4 days pretty quickly. And we are adding something in here that wasn't in here before, that we just did with an amendment to allow these types of vehicles. I understand the intent is to allow them in here, but we're kind of giving them an out anyway. So we've actually already substantially altered the intent over the last week with this amendment. I appreciate the weight limit, but I don't think we have a number that we could actually go with either in this short time, to the point that Senator Clay's made. So I'll support the amendment, but I think we should probably vote it down, given that we don't know the numbers.
Senator Hawk.
It's not unusual for me to offer an amendment and then hope it fails, but
You're welcome to withdraw.
no, I think I'll keep it in there just so the record shows that we're struggling with that issue. So I'll move.
You moving your amendment?
I'll move my amendment. I'd love to go with that 100-pound limit that Senator Wilborn graciously researched for us, but in the interest of potential harmony, I'll keep it at 2,000 pounds. So I move my amendment.
Further discussion on the amendment? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Those opposed? Amendment fails. Does any of the noes wish to be recorded? Senator Hawk wishes to be recorded no on the amendment.
Yes.
Yes. Sorry. Do any of the yeses wish to be recorded? Senator Hawk does. Back on the bill, I know there's an amendment that was worked out with some of the other groups in KDOT. JR, do you have that amendment, or? Adam, do you have that amendment? That's fine. Committee, we've been handed out amendment. I know that it has 12 continuous months listed in there. Adam, do you want to just walk through this amendment?
Sure. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. As you stated, this was originally based off of some language starting with what KDOT had presented, and then changes have been made since it. So it is not the, I would call the KDOT truly amendment, what they handed out. Changes have been subsequently made to what they proposed. Page 1, there was strike the reference to KDOT in the bill. Page 2 would strike any exemption that could possibly be granted by KDOT. It would insert a new provision for when driverless vehicles would operate, a weight restriction of 34,000 pounds. Since the committee's already taken action on paragraph 4, I'm just going to assume that's disregarded unless otherwise, since you guys have already affirmatively taken action to change continuous to consecutive. If everyone's okay with that. And the other language is identical to what was just adopted. Going on, KDOT wanted to be stricken out of Department of Transportation and insert an agency that operates 24/7. I unfortunately did not get any feedback on what that was intended to be, so that will have to be determined. Additionally, moving on to page 3, dealing with when a vehicle may operate. They changed this kind of standard of when the vehicle would have been reasonably foreseeable that a human should respond, dealing with the ADS-equipped vehicle. It's kind of a new standard of when these vehicles would, I guess, default. Again, also striking reference to exemptions granted by the department. Moving on to page 4. Essentially continue to remove the department's kind of oversight, and then entering governmental departments that regulate or operation and ownership of conventional human driver vehicles. Be a new section entered in the bill allowing governmental departments to adopt rules and regulations. And moving on, it increases the size on page 5 for the Autonomous Motor Vehicle Advisory Committee. New members would be added from the box listed. Moving on page 6, would require the reports to be submitted essentially every July, and it would extend the duration of the committee from 2023 through 2027. So add on some additional years the committee would exist. And I believe that's the toll of all the changes.
Adam, would we need to have by the floor the set agency listed for that, particularly on page 2? Or what? I don't know. I would think it'd have to be, yeah. It'd have to be the highway patrol, probably. A governmental agency that operates 24/7, it's not going to be revenue or KDOT unless it's snowing outside. Do we need to have, my question to you, Adam, is do we need to have an agency listed in there?
Yes, otherwise companies are required to submit their law enforcement interaction plan, and by just stating an agency that operates 24/7, I'm not sure if that would become law, who that would be, to be honest with you. And no, the answer is no.
Okay. Committee, is there any further discussion on this amendment? Senator Pittman.
Just noticing that traditionally when we have an advisory committee or a joint committee, we flip the chairman from House to Senate each year. And this one seems to, on page 5, line 41, seems to put the Speaker of the House as the one who selects the chair permanently without it flipping the following year, unless I'm missing something. I just wanted to does it say it flips on the next? Yeah, so co-chair, that seems like vice chair to me, sounds like the secondary chair. And I was wondering if does that mean that there'd be a chairman, vice chair basically in this committee, and it would always be the Senate would be the co-chair?
Normally they, like in some of our task force and the connectivities, they have co-chairs where you can just share the duties, since you're not really going out and negotiating in conference committees, you're just making recommendations.
So true co-chair sharing, huh? Okay, I haven't seen that work, but that sounds great.
Senator Dietrich.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So here's my one concern. I love this Autonomous Vehicle Advisory Committee, but there's only one law enforcement person in this huge committee. That concerns me. It's just the superintendent of the Highway Patrol or the superintendent's designee, and the Highway Patrol hasn't even been a part of our discussions. So that just concerns me. And I appreciate the fact that Ed has been a big part of the creation of this, but the phone calls that I get regarding this bill, which I'm going to support and move out of committee, is the safety piece, and it's safety according to law enforcement, and so that just concerns me. So I'm just sharing that.
One thing that might alleviate some of your concerns, I don't know, that we put on earlier, when the First Amendment that we put on last Wednesday was to add 2 people from the KCC, which are in charge of commercial motor vehicle safety.
Helpful. I just think we need some law enforcement, but the folks who work the highways, troopers.
I didn't know if we needed someone from the, like the Sheriff's Association or someone like that.
Yeah, just, those are the people that are going to be dealing with us. We're not.
So we'll open, after this amendment, we're open for other amendments.
Thank you.
Further discussion on the amendment? Senator Tyson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I had a question on it's for the reviser on page 5, new section 9, new section 10. Does that fall under the section B that says the provisions of this subsection shall expire in 2025, or is that under, basically, are there any expirations on those two? New section 9 and new section 10.
New section 10 on page 5, the committee itself will expire under the base bill July 1, 2023. The change here would extend that to July 1, 2027, so the committee would be in existence for those additional 4 years, and then it would expire. Essentially, the committee would have no authority after July 1 of 2027, if that makes sense.
That's what I wanted to make sure, it was the 2025 or 2027. And if I may, Mr. Chairman, I do have some concerns about the members on the committee and the co-chairmanship as to understand being able to call the meeting, but how is the order of chair? When we did the Unemployment Oversight Committee, we established that it was a House member to begin, and then for X number of years, and then the Senate would chair. Is there some type of relationship that's been defined? Thank you.
I don't believe there's anything defined in it currently at this time. Committee, further questions on the amendment? Senator Cluse.
I would also look at some point, I don't know if we'd add it now or look at it later, but adding to the committee someone, representation from motorcycle like ABATE, because they've had some concerns on this bill.
As soon as we're clear of this amendment, we're open to add. May have a pretty good sized task force. Further questions on the amendment? I don't think I've made a motion yet to move the amendment, but I will make that motion to move this amendment. Seconded by Senator Clays. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed? Amendment is adopted. Senator Dietrich.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I would like to pose an amendment conceptually, since it's not in writing, of adding a member from the Highway Patrol Troopers Association, a member from the Sheriff's Association. I just think law enforcement needs to be a bigger part of this. We have all of the manufacturers, but those are really very self-serving members of this committee. I need, for my comfort, to have our law enforcement be participating in this.
Seconded by Senator Clays. That was a motion, correct?
Yes, thank you.
Any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Amendment is adopted. We're back on the bill. Senator Cluse?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd also like to see about adding a member from the Motorcycle Association, ABATE, on this piece as well. I'd like to move that.
It's been moved by Senator Cluse, seconded by Senator Clays to add a member of ABATE. I believe it's American Bikers Against Totalitarian Enactments. Senator Hawk.
Can't say that I love the acronym of that group. Are there any other motorcycle groups? It's clear to me we do have a Troopers Association, a Sheriff's Association. Is this the only organized motorcycle group, or should we keep it more generic so we're not locked into one? I don't know.
I believe there's probably several motorcycle groups. This is one that has appeared before this committee quite often on safety issues and, you know, the guardrail issues on K-10 and cheese graters. Senator Clays.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just to give a quick background on ABATE, understanding that the name is alarming to some. Here is their mission statement. They are a 501c3 nonprofit. Their mission is to foster, promote, and encourage safe motorcycling in the state of Kansas. They engage in educational programs and other promotional activities in order to educate the public as to motorcycle safety and motorcycling in general.
Senator Pittman. Senator Hawk.
Do we know how large their membership is? Are they several hundred, several thousand size? I'm just curious how large their group is.
You know that, Senator Clays? I do know they have hundreds of people at their rallies at Lake Perry. I do know that. I don't know if Mr. O'Neill out there is a member and knows the membership number, but
Mr. Chairman?
Senator Hawk.
No, I believe it's really important to have the motorcycle group. I'm just raising a question about, is it representative? And I would hope so. And if it is, I'm comfortable with that. I just don't know specifically about how large it is and if there are any other groups that are equally as noble as ABATE. So just a question.
They have appeared, Senator Cluse.
I would just add that they have chapters all over the state representing the entire state. So, and this has been an organization that's been out there for quite some time.
They're probably one of the more engaged motorcycle groups in the political process. Further questions? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed? Amendment is adopted. I believe it passed unanimously. Senator Pittman.
You know, I know that lawyers aren't necessarily popular, but it's a glaring point that we don't have anybody looking at the liability. I know we have trade members, municipalities, labor, highway patrol, and I know some of these members might get selected off while we revise it, but I want to propose that we have at least one member of the Kansas Trial Lawyer Association to represent the interests of those who might have to defend themselves and understand the issues of liability that we might need to address over the course of this. I'm hoping we don't have to make a lot of changes, but I think it's important to have those kinds of eyes looking at it as well. So I'd like to make an amendment that says one member appointed by the governor from the Kansas Trial Lawyer Association.
Is that a motion? Yes, sir. Do we have a second? Seconded by Senator Hawk. Further discussion? Senator Wilborn.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Along with the trial lawyers, would you want the defense counsel also on the board? Or the KBA? I just hate to single out one part of the whole contingency fee lawyer situation, put them on a board whereby they have their eyes focused on only liability issues. I'll be opposing this amendment. Thank you.
Is that a motion? Do we have a second? Seconded by Senator Hawk. Further discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed? Noes have it. Amendment failed. Sure you can. Back on the bill. Senator Tyson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think we should clarify who's chairing the meeting at what times and when. And I have grave concern over this advisory committee. If you look at it, 6 legislators and, well, you do the count for how many appointments the governor's making. And it's not about politics or anything like that. It's just about a productive meeting to have the results intended with this advisory committee. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Do you have a conceptual amendment on that, on the chairing?
I don't.
Senator Pittman.
I'll make a conceptual amendment that we have the Speaker of House select, the Senate President select the first year, the chair, and the House select the vice chair, and then on the following year, we flip it.
Would it be easier to do like odd years and even years?
Absolutely. I'll make my amendment change, and I'll say on even years, on odd years, we'll have the Senate President appoint the chair, and on even years, we'll have the Speaker appoint the chair.
Do we have a second? Seconded by Senator Clay. Further discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed? Motion carries. We're back on the bill. Committee, what's your pleasure on the bill? Senator Clays.
Seeing no further amendments, are there further amendments? We'll go back to the chair.
Senator Hawk.
I'm sorry, I thought there was another one coming in. I do have the amendment that I mentioned the other day. Are we ready for that one?
If you're wanting to offer, it, we're ready for that one.
I would like to offer that. I don't know if Adam has it. I can.
It should be in our folders, I
It
believe.
should be, and I can generally explain it, again, as I did the other day, or Adam can. What's your advice?
Adam, do you want,
For anyone who's, it's the one that has the box in the right-hand corner says legislative enactment. Does any senator need a copy?
go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The amendment makes changes starting on page 2. And what it does is it would preclude the operation by a driverless vehicle until the legislator would enact a further legislation that would essentially allow them to operate in the state with a driverless capable vehicle. So essentially, it would require all the provisions will stay in place. However, they couldn't operate with just a driverless capable without a human operator unless further the legislator would take further action. Additionally, it would require this would apply to both regular vehicles or conventional passenger vehicles and trucks, the bigger vehicles. And also the report, there'd have to be a report issued by February 20th. It would up the date by, from July 1st to February 20th, conceivably, so the legislator would get a report next February 20th from this committee.
Senator Hawk.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, Adam. As I said the other day when I made this amendment, I think one of my primary obligations is public safety, and generally I support the technology moving on, and I suspect we'll be having driverless vehicles, but I want to make sure that they're as safe as it can be and that I've done my do diligence. And as we pass this out, I think we have wisely put an advisory committee in there, and it, depending on what that testing period reveals, perhaps there are some accidents, perhaps there are software glitches. I'm hoping everything goes well, but this just says the legislature has to get that report and then make a final decision. Is it safe to have driverless vehicles on our highways in Kansas and public roads? And it does that. It's possible that, depending on how this gets started, this could extend that time period beyond 1 year, but that report would be given next year, February 20th. So if the legislature felt like that was an adequate report, we could remove that from the statutory requirement so it doesn't necessarily extend it out. If we don't feel comfortable with it, then it might extend it out. And I think it just assures that, from my vantage point, that I and my colleagues here have really taken public safety seriously, and we're confident that this is a safe thing to occur on our roads. And if we need it, it sort of operates like a sunset without being a sunset, particularly, so it really puts us in a position of having to make a decision after we get that report from the advisory committee. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
We've had a motion on this.
If you would like one, I move my amendment.
We have a second, seconded by Senator Pittman. Further discussion? I do have some concerns on the extending of the date if someone came through there, but Any further discussion? Senator Hawk?
I did talk with the reviser about this, and we've had a couple good conversations, and this seemed to be the only way to really write this and have it be clear and accomplish what I wanted, was to have the legislature have to get that report and make a final decision. You know, I struggle with making this decision now and knowing that no matter what the results are of this testing period, that it's going to go into effect a year after it started with the consecutive wording that we put in there. So, if there's no more
Further
comments.
discussion? Committee, what's your pleasure on the amendment? All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed, no? Amendment fails. We're back on the bill. Senator Clays.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. No further amendments? Okay, seeing none, I move the committee recommend Senate Bill 546 favorably as amended.
We have a motion. Do we have a second? Seconded by Senator Cluse. Motion by Senator Clays to pass it out favorably. Any further discussion? Senator Pittman.
Mr. Chair, I'm just going to explain my vote today. I feel like we have a really nice package of framework. I really am excited about the partners who've gotten together. This is exciting technology for Kansas and for the United States to continue moving forward. We did move fast. I want to keep working this process. I think that we've got a pretty wide open framework. I know we have an advisory committee, but it's just making a report out. I feel like there are still liability concerns. You know, we just had a tractor trailer in Colorado plow down through four different vehicles when their brakes failed. And they had a driver in it, and they got 100 years. Obviously, that was an extreme sentence. But when that happens with a driverless vehicle, semi going on a road, and let's say that we have, you know, a fantastic company like Attic who's putting aftermarket sensory devices on to do this, whose fault is it? Who would get the criminal penalty? And who bears the liability on the product? Is it the truck? Is it the operator? Is it the owner? I just think there's a number of pieces that I still have concerns about, and I hope we can continue to work this to really address those, because I think liability and safety are the primary concerns, like my fellow senator mentioned to me, as we get into this world. And we really need to look out for public safety and be very, very clear, hyper clear, as we get into this. I just don't think we've hit that mark yet. So I'll be voting no today, knowing that this is probably going to pass out. But I do hope that we can continue to work towards more protections for our consumers, address some of the liability issues for the non-commercial vehicles that might get this. I think $25,000 with this offset is a pathetically low kind of limit when we have these things operating. And I just know, working with software, I've got a great software company I work for. We do great things for our customers, but we have bugs in our systems, and they just pop up. And we need to make absolutely sure that these things are being operated in a way that's safe for the public. So I'm excited about the work we've done, though, so I just want to make those remarks before we vote.
Senator Hawk.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. For the reasons you just heard from Senator Pittman, I have reservations about this bill. I'm going to vote yes, because I think it's important to move it out of committee. I'm not sure I can guarantee I'll vote for it on the floor, but I think it's important to move it through the process, and hopefully as we get to conference committee, some of those wonderful amendments I suggested might be considered. But at any rate, I applaud the work of you as chair and the group of people that have been working collaborative to try and get this bill out. And I'll be real interested to seeing if we can address some of the concerns that we've all said here in the committee over the last few weeks. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Committee for discussion? Seeing none, we do have a motion to pass it out favorable. It's been seconded. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Those opposed? You wish to be recorded? Senator Pittman wishes to be recorded? No. Committee, thank you for the work on 546. We'll turn our attention to 2633. That's the bill we just heard yesterday on the providing the city of Hutchinson a distinctive license plate. Do we want to, committee, do you feel we need a briefing from Adam on that? Looks like no. Committee, what's your pleasure on the bill? I believe Senator Tyson had an amendment. Senator Tyson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I do have an amendment. It was written for the last bill, but we're going to put it on this one. Oh, great. It's not written for the last bill. Thank you. If I may, Mr. Chairman, I'd explain my amendment.
Yes, you may.
Thank you. I would, being from rural Kansas and working in urban Kansas, there are many of us that would like to see the county in which a vehicle is from or registered from. And so this amendment would require going forward on personal tags, car tags that, and regular car tags, that it require the county sticker.
Do we have a second? Seconded by Senator Bowers. Further discussion? I appreciate the fact that it is by decal, not being required to be printed on there. That'll make it a lot easier for folks. Senator Pittman.
I'm not real supportive of this, and it has nothing, I just don't see a real need for us to add this in as an extra layer of identification. I don't think that we need to have everybody knowing where everybody's from in terms of counties. Myself, doesn't mean that the committee doesn't, but I don't feel it to be a particularly heavy need right now. Thank you.
Senator Dietrich.
So you didn't grow up in Kansas and have to memorize all 105 counties and their two-letter designation, did you? My question is there an additional cost to that for the sticker? I just don't know the answer to that.
I believe the stickers used to cost around $2, but I'm not sure anymore. Senator Tyson.
Mr. Chairman, I'm not sure on the cost, but I will defend the sticker. We have an issue with vehicles going through K-tag and being, the numbers are not accurate. If this county sticker was on there, that would help decrease the amount of duplication going through K-tag. So there are applicable, logical reasons in order to have the county. It also helps law enforcement when they're doing tag numbers. Again, the duplicity of those numbers creates a problem. It helps decrease that by a county-by-county basis.
Senator Clays.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I concur. I think it's important that we do put those on there for safety of our officers and then also to prevent errors. But my question would be, and maybe this is worthy of more research, we can pass this and then go deal with it in the House, but the current license plate setup that we spent a ton of money on is a digital system where you are FedExed your license tag several days later. So we're already going through a digital process where the license plate is printed on demand, and it would take nothing, I would think, except a minor change in the way that they're doing the setup on the personalization to pop that county up in the corner and avoid the extra cost of a sticker. I think it would cost, it'd be a one-time setup charge to figure that out, I imagine, from revenue. But beyond that, I think because of the way that we do our license tags now, that we wouldn't need to do a sticker. But I'm fine with passing this and just figuring that out as we go through the process. I'm sure we can have someone come in from revenue and talk to us about how that works.
Or, Mr. Chairman, I could adjust my motion to include that. I think that's a great idea.
I would just want to make sure it's possible and that it's easy. I don't want to do something that's really hard. So either way, thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Some people,
We could leave it as a sticker, and then in conference, it could be dealt with. Would that be acceptable? Okay, or the House?
sometimes people do move around and they may want to keep their same personalized plate, and if it goes to a different county. Committee for discussion on the amendment. Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed? Wish your no to be recorded? We're back on the bill, committee. What's your pleasure on the bill? Senator Clays.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I move the committee recommend House Bill 2633 favorably as amended.
We have a second. Seconded by Senator Tyson. Further discussion? All those in favor signify by passing out favorably, signify by saying aye. That's 2633 as amended. Those opposed? Thank you. Motion carries. Thank you, committee, for all your work this year. It's been a little wild and crazy here at the end. I appreciate your indulgence and apologize for working on a Friday. Have a great one. I think we've missed the floor probably. Please take your folders with you.